Hi, and welcome to the Ask Us tutorial on how to respond to an Ask Us paper that is submitted to the ASC, how to respond both in the document as well as what to send the student back when you've finished with your feedback. To begin, during your shift, you're going to get the Ask Us papers that have been submitted via the website sent to you by email. This is an example of what the email will look like. For the student's privacy, I have blocked out the name, but the submission that the student fills out is going to look like this, where you have their name, their student ID, and email address, as well as the course that the paper is for and the instructor. If they have entered the paper more than once, they'll indicate that. A description of the assignment, and then sometimes they will include their instructor's assignment instructions, which will be in this file view here. And then finally their paper, which they've uploaded, is going to be the very last tab on the bottom, which you would just click that in order to download the file to your own computer. As soon as you get this form in your email, from there you can go ahead and proceed to opening the document and giving the student feedback. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at the paper. This is the paper that we've just downloaded from our email. The student's name is once again blocked out, but as you can see, this is a nursing paper from a nursing student that has to be done in APA format and has a certain number of pages, including cover page and references. So this is an example of what your cover page has to look like in APA format. So the student has done everything correctly on the cover page, but as we go into the first page, the first correction that needs to be made is this introduction at the top, because in APA format, the word introduction is not supposed to be used because it's implied that the beginning of the paper is in fact the introduction. According to APA 7th edition format, on this page, the student should have the title and it should exactly match the title that's on the cover page. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a comment. And to do that, you would just highlight the section of text that you want to comment on, and then right click and select New Comment. Once you've selected New Comment, it's going to give you a box that you can go ahead and type in, and you're just going to type your feedback. I like to provide an example of what their correction should look like. So I've gone ahead and I've typed the title as it appears on the cover page, as well as centered it and bolded it, which you can do just by adding in the space. And to bold it, you would just highlight the section of text that you want to change, and you can hit either Control B to bold or Control I for italics. And then on the next line, you would go ahead and start the paper so that the student can see a visual example of what the beginning of their paper should look like. Now here, this is the second correction that we have to make. Because the introduction is not to be used as a header, and because the title is not considered a header in APA format, then this would be a level 1 header, and therefore it should be centered. So we're going to go ahead and add a comment, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to the next error. Now this is an example of a paper that doesn't have too much wrong with it. The student has probably gone through a few revisions before this draft has been turned in, so there's really not a whole lot that needs to be corrected. Sometimes there will be more grammar corrections that are required, such as comma splices or sentence fragments. Sometimes it's the citation format that needs to be corrected, such as how to put in the last name or what information is required in the in-text citations, things like that. It looks like this student has taken care of most of that, so we're just left with some basic corrections that we want to make sure that the student gets. So for example, you want to avoid starting a sentence with the word also, so we're going to go ahead and correct that. You might also find issues such as having the punctuation outside of the quotation marks, which we want to avoid. This is another thing that we would want to correct here. First and second person pronouns shouldn't be used in academic writing unless the instructor has specifically asked for it. Sometimes they will, but in general, I tend to assume that they haven't, because a lot of students do tend to just go ahead and use those pronouns regardless of whether or not they've been instructed to. And it's usually the case that they have not been given those instructions. That's just how they write. So we want to make sure to catch that and make sure to correct that. So this is just an example of how the student might get rid of that first person pronoun. When you correct the student using first or second person pronouns, you want to give them an example of how to omit those pronouns so that they can still retain the idea of their sentences without having to fall back on I feel or I learned or similar language. Here I've given an example of the sentence just with the beginning part taken off, so that the sentence now reads that hospice care is helpful and beneficial for patients, and that these services should be offered for the betterment or the benefit of the patient. Obviously, that's not word for word what's in the essay, but the point being is that the general idea of the student's reflection is still in the sentence. The only thing that has been removed is the first person pronoun, so that nothing is lost with the omission of those pronouns. We want to go ahead and check the references, make any corrections that might be needed. And again, this paper is likely a second or third draft, so there's not too much, and I've also not gone through and corrected every little thing that could be corrected just for the sake of this tutorial. Obviously, when you're doing the paper, you do want to correct as much as possible, but I'm just kind of going over this as an example. But once you have completed your comments, you're going to go ahead and save the paper on your desktop or somewhere on your computer, and then we're going to go ahead and send it back to the student. So the next step, after we've filled out the paper and provided all of the feedback to the student, we're going to go ahead and fill out the Ask Us Tutor response form. This is a summary of everything that the student needs to know in order to revise their paper. I've gone ahead and filled out an example of what one of these sections would look like once you provided an explanation. For organization, if you remember, the title of the paper does not count as a header, so the first header that they had needed to be centered in the middle of the paper, and we provided an example in the comments of how to do that. We've got that explanation in there for the student. Another area that they would need to work on is to get rid of those first person pronouns that we pointed out. So here I'm going to go ahead and fill that out under sentence style, and before I even provide a comment, I'm going to go ahead and provide a link to the appropriate Ask Us handout that the students find useful for revision. You can get these handouts from the IRSC ASC Weebly and download them onto your computer. I like to keep them in a folder on my desktop so that I have them easily within reach. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and right click, and I'm going to select Insert a Hyperlink. And I'm going to go ahead and select, because that will let me browse my computer. I have gone ahead and gone into my Ask Us folder and selected the writing guidelines, which talks about the first and second person pronouns. And under text to display, I'm going to delete the URL and just go ahead and put in the title of the handout. And then I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to go ahead and pop up in the paper for me. When the student receives this feedback, they'll have the ability to click on that hyperlink, and they'll be able to open the handout on their own computer very easily. Underneath that hyperlink, I'm going to go ahead and provide information on what they need to pay attention to and what they need to revise. Once you've put in your explanation, you can go ahead and move on to the next area. A summary of next steps, you want to make sure to just wrap up what they need to do. This student needs to revise their title to get rid of that introduction. Revise the headers so that they're in the correct placement. I'm also including that to revise other minor corrections as indicated in the paper, such as placing punctuation inside of quotation marks and any other smaller things that might have popped up. Once you have filled out the Ask Us tutor response form, you're going to go ahead and save that to your desktop where you can easily find it along with the paper that you previously have revised. And then you're going to go ahead and go back to your email. This is an example of what kind of feedback would be offered in the email that you send back to your student. The information here is just a brief summary of what you have both marked on the paper as well as provided in the Ask Us tutor response form. I like to start each email greeting the student and letting them know my name and thank them for using Ask Us, and congratulations on their hard work because they have worked hard on the paper that they've submitted to you, and that should be acknowledged. This is just a brief overview of some of the feedback that I provided on the paper, such as the APA format, removing the introduction, and the personal pronouns. And then I always like to finish with letting them know that their paper is attached with the comments and further revision information is attached on the tutor response form. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to let me know so that the student knows that they can reach out to you if anything in your feedback is unclear or if they would like to double check, whatever the case may be. Let them know that they're welcome to do that. So you would go ahead and email that student, and then you want to make sure to CC Josephine Lewis on all of the paper correspondence that you send to the student. And then of course, before you send the email, you're going to attach both the student's document with your feedback on it and the Ask Us tutor response form that you've filled out and saved on your computer. Once you have uploaded those as attachments, you're going to go ahead and hit send. And then that's it. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope that it was informative, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks and good luck.